The Erebus 7 was the most advanced deep space research vessel ever built. Designed for long-haul exploration, it had been drifting through the void for nearly 2 years, mapping uncharted regions of the galaxy. The crew of 12 had grown accustomed to the silence, the vast inescapable emptiness of space. And then the signal came. At first, it was nothing but a faint pulse, a rhythmic flicker in the static of their long-range communications array. Commander Alex Ward dismissed it as interference, an anomaly caused by some unknown cosmic phenomenon. But as the signal grew stronger, more structured, the crew realized it wasn't random. Something, or someone, was transmitting. Dr. Evelyn Hart, the ship's xenolinguist, spent hours analyzing the transmission. It was a repeating sequence, a pattern of sounds buried beneath the layers of distortion. Eventually, she extracted a single phrase. Help us. The message came from an empty region of space. No planets, no stations, and no known vessels. Just a set of coordinates drifting in the dark. Against every instinct, the Erebus 7 adjusted its course. As they neared the source, a massive object emerged from the void. A derelict spaceship, twice the size of theirs, with no known registry. It was old, its hull scarred and pitted by centuries of space debris. The nameplate had eroded away, leaving only fragments of letters. A boarding party was assembled. Ward, Dr. Hart, and 2 engineers suited up and crossed the void. The ship's docking bay was torn open, as if something had forced its way in, or out. The emergency lights inside flickered, casting long, twitching shadows. The air was stale, heavy with a metallic tang. The corridors were littered with decayed remains, but something was wrong. The bodies weren't just decomposed, they were hollow. Empty husks, skin clinging to bone, their mouths locked in silent screams. Hart studied the walls. Scrawled in what looked like dried blood were hundreds of messages, overlapping each other in desperate, jagged handwriting. One phrase repeated over and over, "Do not listen." Then, their radios crackled. "Help us, please. We're still here, please." Hart's stomach dropped. The voice was her own. The transmission had never been a distress call. It was a lure. Something in the ship was mimicking their voices, pulling them deeper. The further they explored, the more distorted their reflections became in the ship's rusted surfaces. Their shadows moved before they did. Then the screaming started. One of the engineers, Patel, was ripped backward into the darkness. His screams turned into static. Ward ordered a retreat, but the corridors twisted, rearranging like a living maze. The Erebus 7 was gone, replaced by an infinite stretch of dim, flickering passageways. In the distance, something watched. A shape, writhing in the shadows, its form indistinct yet impossibly familiar. Every time they blinked, it grew closer. The whispers in their radios became their own voices, begging to be saved. Hart realized the truth. The ship was a trap, a predatory construct feeding off explorers lured by the distress signal. It absorbed them, stealing their voices, their identities, and their very being. Ward made the call. They had to destroy it. With their last oxygen reserves, they reached the core, a pulsating fleshy mass fused with the ship's remains. Faces formed and unformed in its surface. Patel, other victims, perhaps even the original crew. Hart set the charges. As they detonated, the creature let out a deafening human scream. The ship shattered, throwing them into the vacuum of space. As their suits' emergency thrusters activated, Ward and Hart caught a final glimpse of the wreckage, and the thing inside it, still watching, still whispering. They barely made it back to the Erebus 7, but as they activated their escape drive, Hart's blood ran cold. The distress signal was still broadcasting, and her voice was still calling for help.